Well, hi, Sax Gourmet fans. Greetings from Sax Gourmet World Headquarters. I'm down in the ultra top secret command and control bunker right now. And I'm Steve Goodson. And hey, you ask your mama about me. She remembers me. Chad Taylor, glad to have you with us, good brother Chad. He's up in Chicago. You get him to work on your saxophone. He's my buddy. But anyway, we've had more advanced interest in tonight's topic, which is saxophone resonators, than anything else. I'm not sure what that's about, but the fact of the matter is people have a lot of questions. People have a lot of, frankly, they've gotten a lot of misinformation. Hello, Raul. Thank you for joining us. But at any rate, we got a lot to cover tonight, so I'm going to get right in it. Now, first, let's talk about what in the world is a resonator and why do we even have them? All right. Back in the old Corps, when they were first making saxophones, what they did is they would make a pad and they would take a stitch in the center of the pad just to tighten it up around the backing, such as it was. John Connor, hello, buddy. There was no resonator. And then later on, somebody, and I don't know who it was, figured out that why don't we put a rivet through the middle of the pad, and that rivet well, it wasn't a resonator, but it was very much tightened up the leather. That's what that was about. Well, the first resonators that I think I ever saw, and I will certainly stand for correction if I'm wrong about this, were on some of the con horns, and I don't recall ever seeing them before the 6M and 10M and 30Ms. I will stand for correction on that because, of course, by the time, even as old as I am, by the time those horns got around to me, they'd been repadded half a dozen times. So it was very unusual that you would see one that had what appeared to be the original pads in it. And to give you an idea of what those looked like, I happen to have a brand new Con Reso pad, is what they called it, because it had a resonator on it. And you see that little metal disc there? That's what they tried to pass off as a resonator. And why do we have them? What was the advantage? Well, as the energy wave goes through the horn, the energy wave, now remember, the air doesn't mean anything. All the air is a vehicle for that wave of energy. What we want to do is reflect that energy back when we have a closed tone hole and get it to get on about its business of making some good music. Because the pad leather, you see, the pad leather is soft and spongy, and it acts just like a sponge, and that deadens the sound. Now, I want to recognize somebody that I'm thrilled to death is here, and I want to give a salute to my hero and a great mentor to me, Mr. Eric Satterley. Eric is the owner of Meridian Winds and is one of the greatest repairmen that's ever lived, but on top of that, Eric is a good human being and my buddy. I call him for advice all the time. And let me tell you something. If you're up in his area up there in the frozen northland of, in the Midwest, Meridian Winds and Eric Satterley, I highly recommend it. All right, so anyway, what we're trying to do is get our saxophone to function more efficiently. And by efficiently, I mean that we don't lose energy as that wave is going through the horn. How do we do that? By increasing the size of the resonator. Oh, look at this. This came out. Now, this is not the original size, but look at that. That came out of a Selmer, and that's what Selmer called the Tonex resonator. We're going to talk some more about those later. But when the key closed down over the tone hole, in this case, here, let me get you a good close-up of this. Yeah, you see, there's hardly any exposed leather. That's the way it ought to be. And if you'll do it like that, what you will have is you will have an instrument that operates more efficiently. And that means you can increase the dynamic range and you can quicken the response. Why? It's because the energy is not being absorbed by this sponge that is actually our pad leather. Okay, now today resonators are available typically in these approximate sizes, 10 millimeters, 15 millimeters, 17 millimeters, 22 millimeters, 28 millimeters, 32 millimeters, and 36 millimeters. Different companies have, oh yeah, excuse me, Eric, yes. Eric wanted to correct me and say that he is the Grand Poobah of the Loyal Order of Water Buffalo. That's right, and I apologize for that, my good friend. But at any rate, so the biggest resonator you could get, stock size, is this. Here, you can look at that. That's a 36 millimeter, and that's okay. That's okay for a lot of application. But who got left out in the cold? The bari and bass players. And you know, I consider myself a baritone player by profession. And so about 15 years ago, probably longer than that, I had a relationship with a company that I was designing stuff for them and all that. And we came up with this. I want you to see this. That, my friends, is a 46 millimeter solid brass Noyak resonator, and this one happens to be gold plated. But, you know, for a bari or a bass, here, let's put it on top of this big old, oh, it covered that boy up and couldn't use it. That's too big for that pad, and let's see. Here's a bigger pad. Yeah. This one got a resonator on it, but yeah, look at that. Yeah. And that'll make those baris roar. And in my personal bari, we got these boys all over the place. But at any rate, we started making resonators in addition to the sizes that I quoted, 42 millimeters and 46 millimeters. Now, understand this, and if you learn nothing else from me today, learn this. You're going to have some of those guys who are not old enough to shave that are Rebecca Barry. Hello, beautiful. But some of those guys who are not old enough to shave that are up there on Sax on the Web just typing away down in mommy's basement about people they don't know and horns they never played, but that's never stopped them. But what you're going to have is this. They're going to tell you that if you use plastic resonators and you use metal resonators, that you're going to have a lot of difference in the sound, and that metal resonators will make it too bright. Well, I'm going to beg to differ with them, and I'm going to tell you why. It is true that a plastic resonator and a metal resonator do have a different sound, and I'll demonstrate why that is in a minute. You know, all things being equal, which they rarely are, but they might be. But something that you need to understand very clearly is that metal resonators, particularly if it is made of the same metal as your horn body, which is what will reflect the most accurately, of course, because we want that wave to be the same. Metal resonators don't make the horn bright. It's just that plastic resonators tend to deaden the horn and make it a little darker than otherwise it would be. So remember that. We almost always recommend metal resonators to our client. Omar, I'll get to your question in a minute, and it's scrolling up on my screen, so I've missed it. So anyway, could you re-enter your question, because I can't touch all this, and it's already scrolled out, because a lot of people are asking questions. So understand that we're trying to reflect that wave that goes through the horn as accurately as possible. We're not worried about the airstream. And if you don't believe me, do this. Put your horn together, take the mouthpiece off, finger low B flat, and put your mouth around the cork and blow as hard as you can. And that's how much how much inherent resistance is in your horn. And that, my friends, is why the airflow really doesn't mean a damn thing, as long as there are no leaks, of course. So understand that the resonator, keeping that wave going where we want to, and also think about this. Now, I'm in a saxophone designing business, so something we're very aware of is when we figure out where the effective center of every tone hole is, that is where I want my resonator to be, because that's where that wave is going to hit. I don't want, it doesn't do any good to have your resonator here, but the wave hits over there. Come on. And believe it or not, I actually have seen some horns like that. All right. Now, so what I've tried to convey to you right now is the resonator ought to be kind of like a mirror. Think of it like a mirror. Now, every morning when I get up and look at this handsome face, and after I say, don't you ever die, and I'm looking and maybe I want to shave a little bit. I don't shave too much now, but okay, Omar, I'll answer that in a minute. But at any rate, what I want is the mirror that I'm looking in to reflect my beautiful image as accurately as possible. So for that very same reason, I want the resonator to reflect as accurately as possible. So it's got to be the same metal as the horn body. It's got to be as big as I can possibly get it. Get them all the way out to the tone hole edges if I can. And that way I'm going to get maximum efficiency. Now, one of the questions I got, and this was a good question, that I got from John Duckworth. Some of y'all know him as Johnny Ducks. But John asked me, said, well, Steve, I've watched you put pads in, and one of the things you do is you iron the pads to where the surface is sealed on the leather. Yes, we do. Yes, indeed. Here's a pad that we iron. Oh, look at that sexy resonator. But this pad, this leather is sealed and almost hard. This improves things, okay? I'm not going to lie to you, that does improve things, but the ideal goal is something like that, okay? All right, now, you got to watch out for that leather absorption. All right, let's start talking about the different materials. And Omar, I got your question now, and I'm gonna get to that in a few minutes. There's a great book that I would recommend anybody interested in saxophone repair read, which is called The Saxophone is My Voice by Ernest Ferron. And there's a lot of very useful information there, but one of the things that Mr. Ferron recommended was that you get some ebony, get an ebony rod, and then Casey Ray, hello brother, but you get an ebony rod and you slice it very thin, and then you glue it on the outside of the pad and use that as your resonator. Now there's some advantages to that, and Mr. Ferron is right. One of the things is, as anybody who's done any amount of saxophone repair knows, the pad cups are not always centered over the tone holes. They should be, but in the reality they're not. So you can, by using that and gluing it on the surface leather, you can actually offset that resonator a little bit to reflect where the tone hole actually is. Is that a good idea? You better believe it's a good idea. But, if you take a resonator of some variety and you glue it onto the pad, over time, that resonator, the weight of that resonator, even if it's very slight, is going to make that droop down. It sure is. It's going to make it droop down. And you're going to have that sagging and all that, and it's a terrible thing. Now, something I spoke to a few minutes ago was about the different materials that we use for resonators and how some of them are a good idea, some of them not such a good idea. Let me find my samples here. This is a plastic resonator. It's polystyrene. Any of you that ever built model airplanes or model car. Hello, Drew. Model cars, familiar with this stuff. It's very heat sensitive. You get it hot at all, it'll distort. That might be a problem. Here's another one that I don't think they make these anymore. But these are sort of conical and all that. And if you get a good look at the back of this, how you install it in the pad? Well, you got to have one of these. What in the world is that? This is called a heat staking tool. And you take this and you get it good and hot. This little stub here, see that? It sticks through the pad, and this is good and hot. And you take it here, and it's got a little point on it. You match that up like that, and you do it like this, and the end result ends up looking like that. I did this one myself because I want to demonstrate this to you guys. And that's the way a lot of the less expensive resonators are put on. Is that a good idea? I don't think so, but you know, different folks like different stuff. Now, there's another type of another variation on that theme, and that's this. This is a resonator made by a different company, but it's still, see, it's slightly different color. And it's got this little thing on the back. Let's see if I can get it out. Maybe not. Well, anyway, just trust me, this is just a little snap that goes in the back. But the problem is this snap puts a high spot in the back of the pad. And then you trying to, seat your pads even in the cups, you'd have to float a lot of shellac around that, which is a bad idea. Never use more than is necessary. But you would have to float a lot of shellac in there to keep that pad from wiggling around. Well, not a good idea. Now, let's talk about a good resonator that a lot of you old-timers like me are familiar with, and a lot of you wannabes who say, Mark 6, Mark 6, Mark 6. Can't play unless you have a Mark 6. Got to have a Mark 6. I own a bunch of Mark 6s, but you can't play without a Mark 6. Well, okay, whatever. The Mark 6 came with two different resonators. Let's look at the first one. Here's one. I've been saving these for years. That's this. This is a brass resonator that's nickel-plated. It's slightly domed, but it goes on, you see, with a screw. It's got a big washer on the back. And this is tapered back here, and so it goes into the back of the pad, and it's perfectly flat. And then around $99,000 on the Mark 6s. And next time I talk to Jerome Selmer, I'm going to ask him if he knows why they did that. They switched to this resonator here, and you say, well, that's another plastic resonator, Steve. No, it's not. It's screw back, like the other one. They used a slightly different screw, but that's okay. No washer. The screw head is plenty big, you see. Keep it from going through the hole. This is actually made of nylon. Yeah. So it's not as heat sensitive. It's much more durable and a lot stronger. So that's a good idea. All right. Now, other materials that have been used for resonators over time are, let's see, let me get some of these out here. Yeah. If you look at this is what they call a Noyak resonator. Why? Because the guy who invented them was a Dutchman, and his name was Noyak. And these are made of aluminum. And I used to call them Hollywood resonators because the guy who had the tooling for these actually was a repairman for the Los Angeles City Schools. And that was the only place you could get them for a long time, and then the patent expired, but I'll tell you about that in a little bit. But at any rate, these resonators made of aluminum, and there's a problem with using aluminum. They sure are easy to stamp out because aluminum in the grand scheme of things is pretty soft. But the reality is that your saliva, that stuff you're blowing through your horn, your saliva's got hydrochloric acid in there. What does it do with aluminum? It reacts. And and before long, these things literally get to dissolving before your very eyes. I worked out a deal with a guy in California that was the only source of these, and they were only available in aluminum. So I'd buy a bunch of them because this was back when we were running our repair shop wide open. I had 6 repairmen working for me. And so, but how do we solve that problem? We painted them. We painted them with epoxy. And listen, we ended up with some kind of crazy paint jobs too, just, whatever the customer wanted. So that was a solution to that problem. It sure was. Now, later, I became a big booster of copper, and the resonators my company makes today, this gets machined. This is our PowerPoint resonator. You see it's conical shape. We'll talk about that later. Screw back with a washer, and this whole thing is machined out of 1 bar of copper, 100% copper, on a CNC machine. We have these made by EMR Machine in Phoenix, Arizona. My good friend Bill Liskey owns that company. Bill's a damn fine saxophone player too, by the way. And Steve Brocious is the general manager. What a great guy. Those guys come to see me, and we have a lot of fun. They love New Orleans. But anyway, copper. We use copper because copper is what we're making our horn bodies out of now, because we want our horns to have a lot of mids and lows and have a big, fat, rich sound. And so copper does that. Now, over time, on these different types of resonators, I had, and I looked around, I've got a set of these somewhere, but I couldn't find them. I had some solid silver resonators that actually somebody gave me because they were trying to get me to sell them. And why we choose a Phillips head screw? Because Drew, the screw company, the source for those only had the size I needed with the Phillips head. That's why. And here's another copper resonator. I've never seen these for sale anywhere. I got these from some pads I got from Pino Prestini years and years ago. We also use, of course, brass resonators. Here's a brass Noyak type that we used for a long time. Man, we used a lot of those, and they were good. They were good. I had a whole other bowl full of exhibits today, and I left them somewhere. That's all right. But at any rate, another thing that is very common, I'll show you this one first, is this resonator here. This is what Selmer uses on most of their horn. This is a steel resonator, but it's nickel plated. Why? Because steel rusts and nickel doesn't. Here's another one that somebody else makes. Pazhani makes these, and these have got the rivet soldered into the back of the resonator. This is nickel-plated steel. We've used a lot of those. Here's one of those Selmer resonators installed, what I call Selmer type. It isn't a Selmer resonator. They don't make that. But nickel plating, good idea. Now, with aluminum, like I said, we would paint them with epoxy paint to stop that oxidation. Well, one oxidation, I don't know what you call it, but it's coming. The saliva eating them up. Copper, as pretty as these resonators are, look at that. Ain't that pretty? Look at that bad boy. See, that's the way the screw goes in there. And you see it's dead flat with the back. But at any rate, copper will also, when exposed to moisture or saliva, it'll turn slightly green. So we seal these with a clear coat. We use the same stuff they use to clear coat automobile finish. Spray it on there real thin. Now, another thing that we do, and we do this this is the resonator that comes with the horns we sell. This is a Maestro Resonator that we get from our good friends and business associates up at musicmedic.com. The owner of Music Medic, Mr. Kurt Altrack, is a former student of mine, and he was an excellent student. A lot of times he's smarter than me. So y'all remember that the teacher can always learn from the student. But Kurt's got a very successful company. And this is a solid copper resonator, because once again, the body of our horns is solid copper, but it's gold plated. Why? Gold does not oxidize or deteriorate in any way. Same thing happens with brass. The plating of the brass will patina and make a mess, so you got to do something about that. So we clear coat any brass ones that we use as well. Now, another thing that you need to understand, you can plate any of these with silver or gold. Gold doesn't need a clear coat over it, but let's see, I'll answer that in a minute for Casey. But the covering over that stuff with that clear coat is important. You don't have to do it with the gold. Now, I owned for a long time, I owned a B&S Medusa tenor, and I got talked into sticking some solid silver resonators in that thing, big flat ones that we got from Resonators before that company changed hands. And why did I get solid silver ones? Hell, I don't know. I thought it would be cool. And it was. They looked beautiful and all that, but the damn things would oxidize and all that, and I'd have to take the keys off to clean it up, because I was all the time showing that stuff up. The horn had a ceramic finish on it too. It was white, but it was like it had a porcelain type of finish. Now, with steel resonators, of course, you got to clear coat that and all that. Let's talk about how you install these things. Now, most resonators, the ones that aren't installed with a heat stake, are installed with a rivet. And here you can see, yeah, you see that? That's the back of a rivet that's flared. This is another one of those Pazhani style resonators. It's got a nice little dome to it, and nickel plated. These are real good. Casey Ray, this is what's in your horn. I think I've used that resonator on every one you've got, but they're installed with a through rivet. Remember that if you're going to use rivets, that it's so important that you get the rivet flared properly. Otherwise, it'll pull out. And what we use to do that is this tool right here. Boy, I've had this for like 25, 30 years. This is a rivet splitter. So you put that boy down in the head of that rivet, and you give it a couple of manly whacks with your hammer, and it'll spread that thing out if you got this on straight, which is very important. Now, I've already shown you those snaps that I don't like. Let me find that again. Here it is. This snap, these are too long. They're too long. So the resonator will then kind of cause the whole pad to move around in the cup, and it's not perfectly good. Now, I used to use, I loved these, and they made for a sexy installation. I used to use some screws, and we found this. Now here, if you look at this very carefully, you'll see this is actually two Noyaks. One that was the size we wanted for the pad to clear the tone hole, and then we got a little 10 millimeter one right here, and we got a screw that goes through it with a nut on the back, okay? We never could find a source for the screws and nuts that we wanted, that the screw itself wasn't too long. So what we had to do when we were using this, and guys that got this double outfit like this, man, they thought that was sexy. But we probably didn't do more than 100 horns over a few years with these, so they're not commonly said. But we would take a grinder and file down the back of that boy till it was absolutely flush with the back, you see. It was a hell of a lot of trouble. Now, another thing we did, and this one Here's another one of those double resonators. This is a Pazhani Dome on top of a Noyak. And it's got the rivet back here, see. But that's sexy, and we probably did 50, 75 horns with that. What we really like is this system right here that we're using now. It's a nut, not a nut, but a screw that goes through, and a washer, once again, fits flush, and we just find that to be great. And here's another thing. If you're using a screw system, then the next time the guy gets his horn repadded, hey, Donna, thank you for joining us. But the next time he gets his horn padded, he doesn't have to buy a new set of resonators. Now, full disclosure, most of you guys know I sell resonators, and we don't sell them cheap. But he can use those resonators the rest of his musical career. What a great thing. What a great thing. So, now, let's talk about the adhesive that you want to use. What, adhesive? You better believe I said adhesive. Now, look here. This is something that a lot of people that are repairing instruments really are, this is so bogus what they do. What they do is, if we were going to install this pad here, they would take a stick of shellac, if you're lucky, instead of them using hot glue. But they'd take a stick of shellac and they'd rub it around the back of the pad, and you know, that is bullshit. What you got to do is you take some flake shellac, you mix it with water, not water. You take some flake shellac, mix it with denatured alcohol, stir it up, and you get something about the thickness of motor oil. You take a little bitty brush and you brush it you completely cover the back of the pad, 100%. Then you cover the edges. And then you completely paint the interior of the cup and all the edges there. Stick the pad in there, and it ain't gonna move. Well, you say, yeah, but I've got to move the pad to get the leaks out. Well, that call you an amateur. If you was a real repairman, you'd have had your cup and your tone hole, both of them straight, flat, and lined up. And if you can't do that, then I would suggest you learn how to say, do you want fries with that? Can we supersize that order for you? Really, that makes me mad when I see that. Now, there's one other type of resonator I want to talk to. We used to do, back when we were running the repair shop wide open, we did hey Ray, thank you for joining us. We did an awful lot of Bisher business. And, you know, the guys would come in with those 400 top hat and canes, and they want to use the snap system because the Bishers held their pads in with a snap, kind of like snap on your jeans. And then say, Steve, can't you put some of those resonators on there? Well, let me tell you what we did. This is a trick I'm going to pass along to you guys that you ain't ever seen done before, unless you've seen a Bisher that I did for somebody. The Bisher snap-in pads had a metal back, okay, which is a great idea. I think that Bisher snap-in pad was the best pad that had ever been manufactured. Now, there were a lot of ways it could have been improved on, but all in all, it was a great pad, and they had a metal back. That pad ain't gonna warp if it's got a metal back, but you can take these backs. Listen, I got several coffee cans full of these backs. And, you know, you say the pad I used was this size. Well, can't use that. But if I had a bigger pad, I could take a smaller one of these, put it between the snap and the pad, resonator. And I got a couple of customers that's still using the different Bishers, you know, Aristocrats or 400s, and they got those in them, and they love them. They love them. Now, let's talk about the shape of the resonator and the effect that it has. And since I put you off about this, talking about these flat resonators, here's the problem with a flat resonator. There is a problem. Or let me just say it's not a perfect solution. Because remember, the first thing we talked about tonight was the fact that we wanted our resonator to add something to the horn, and we wanted to make it respond quicker, and we wanted to give it a bigger dynamic range. Okay? That's our goal. Make it better, not just make it the way it was. So if you take this flat resonator as opposed to here, let me just pick one up. Yeah, these are about the same size. This one has got a little bit of dome. Well, wait a minute. That little hump in it, that makes it have a larger surface area, does it not? I mean, I slept through geometry in high school because back then, when I was in the 10th grade, I was playing bars, 3 nights a week and getting up and going to high school the next day. I got a lot of good stories to tell you about that, but you have to do it late night. But then you can take a resonator like this here. This is about the same size. Look here at this. Ooh-wee, baby. There's a lot more surface area there, which I'll get back to that. Or you can take this resonator. Oh, wait, here's one about the same size. Yeah, look at these. See all those waffles in that? All those ridges? Well, if you flatten the whole thing completely out, this, even though these, for the purposes of discussion, we're going to say these are the same diameter. I know they're not, but they're close. But imagine if they were identical in diameter, this one has a much greater surface area, so it resonates a lot more efficiently. This, going back to our reso pad, here, look here. Look at all that exposed. A lot of that's just going to devour the sound. It's going to devour the sound. And a lot of guys who are using this kind of resonator, these flat discs, they might be shy about using a manly size resonator. Now, another thing that you need to understand is that there have been a lot of different things that people have done. Here's one Ferree used to sell. I don't think it's got kind of a point on it. Yeah, it's got a lot more surface area. These that Selma used, and you can buy these. Pazhani sells these. But see, that's got more surface because it's got that. And more surface area is what we want. It's what we want. Now, understand this. If you increase the surface area and you're doing it with something like that, or you're doing it with something like that, or if you're doing it with something like that, if you increase the surface area, you got to be sure, and this almost never comes up, but be sure that the amount of resonator, once that pad sets down, the resonator, of course, is on top of the pad, that goes down inside the tone hole chimney, you don't want to have too much in there because hopefully whoever designed that saxophone did their math and figured out exactly how tall that tone hole chimney would be. Because every time you pull a tone hole on a saxophone body, what you're doing is you're effectively enlarging the bore at that point. And you want to calculate where your nodes go through the horn, and so you want to have the center of a tone hole over the nodal point of the notes you want to control. And there's a 3-hour lesson in physics that one day I'll give you, but not tonight. So we fooled around when we wanted to have our own line of resonators. We fooled around and tried a bunch of different shapes, a bunch of them. Lou Dixon, hello, Betty Lou. I was thinking about you this morning. I saw you posting on our humor group, but Betty Lou's an old girlfriend of mine, but she's a wonderful woman. And her husband is a great guy too, Jim. But anyway, what I want to tell you about now is this business of the resonator getting down in there. And we tried all kind of different shapes until we finally figured out this was, this was the maximum that we could drop down inside there without affecting the intonation. And that's why we have that neat little point on there. You see that? Listen, it cost me a ton of money to have that machined in there just right. But we built some that had more than this dropping down in there. and it screwed up the intonation of the horn. Now, we were talking about painting the back of the pad with the shellac that you're going to use, and one of the reasons is it is so important, that you be sure that you seal around this hole right here where the rivet goes through, because you don't want any blow through on that. Most pads, you can buy just about any pad with a 3mm hole in it, and that's a good thing. Now, one thing I think is worth talking about is how these things are made. Now, these plastic resonators like this, these are just injection molded. These resonators here are stamped like coin press stamp, and that's the way that they make these. These are just stamped out. I'll tell you a little secret about the Noix. These things came in 7 sizes, and you know, you could stack them up, you know, and you'd have a little pyramid. Well, the way they would make them, because they were making them out of aluminum, was they would stamp the smallest one, and then you'd have all it. They just had one tool, cut the smallest one out and throw the rest away, stamp the next biggest one, throw that away, stamp the next biggest, throw that away. There was a ton of waste, but aluminum back then was cheap. Now, on these, our resonators is you can see here, see that how the female part of this comes up. All of this is one piece. We make these on a 5-axis CNC machine. There is no joint, there's no rivet, there's none of that stuff. So that's pretty much what we got on resonators. Match the body material of the horn, use the maximum size, and don't be afraid to, you know, do something that increases that surface area. Put them on there tight. Oh, one other thing I want to say about, and this was not my idea, this was Kurt Altrach's idea. This is a Maestro Resonator, and you'll see that it has a little lip that goes around the perimeter, and that lip cuts into the pad. I mean, it doesn't cut the leather, but it goes into the pad leather, and it seals the perimeter around there. Good idea, Kurt. But at any rate, that's pretty much what you need to know about resonators. As always, I want to thank you for joining us tonight, for watching. I hope you learned something. I'm so happy to see so many of our good customers and friends and all that, and some of the other owners. Rebecca Barry owns a nice music store over in Fairhope, Alabama, and I saw Richard from the Detroit Sax Shop, and Chad Taylor, what a great repairman Chad Taylor is. Jim Simonetti, my hero. Mr. Simonetti and I have had a lot of adventures, and I can't go anywhere near California without going to see Simonetti. And I want to tell you something else about Jim Simonetti. Jim Simonetti is one of the nicest people I know, and he's one of the best musicians I know. And Jim's got a wife who doesn't age. I've known Lois for 25 years, and she ain't aged today. Jim's wife is one of the best looking women I ever saw in my life, and one of the nicest. And when I go out there to their area, Jim lets me stay at their home, and I'm honored. But anyway, I thank everybody for watching. Keith, thank you very much for joining us. This is not your last chance to ask questions. I try to be available during office hours, which is 10 a.m. till 3 p.m. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. And you can call me, and if I'm free, I'm glad to answer any questions. So, at any rate, thanks again. And this is Steve Goodson, and I want to remind you of a couple of things. First, take off your shoes. And then practice long tones every day. Remember to keep your reed wet, and always play Sax Gourmet. Why? Because Sax Gourmet plays best. Yeah, Casey, you better come by and see me. All right, thanks for watching. We'll catch you 2 weeks from now. Goodbye for now.